Hi, I'm Kyle Mishima. I'm a club and high school coach, and I also founded Rotate 123. Today, I'll be presenting critical stats for high school volleyball. The goals for today are focus on the simplest stats that will help you this season, look in chronological order starting with tryouts, provide some methodology, and suggest some tools. Tryouts. What stats matter at tryouts? My experience is more like what stats are never taken at tryouts. I think these are serve receive stats. In club and high school, I have not been around an organization that took serve receive stats, which is most critical stat needed to understand your level of play. This leads to two questions. Why can't I just watch and see who's good? And what is the most critical stat? Michael Lewis, the author of Moneyball, said, some coaches believe they could judge a player's performance simply by watching it. In this, they were deeply mistaken. Fundamentally, your eyes lie. In baseball, the difference between a 250 batter and a 300 batter is millions of dollars. Can you tell the difference between a 1.50 passer and a 1.75 passer just by watching? So why can't I just watch and see who's good? The problem that Lewis points out is that you can't watch enough hits to ascertain a battering average because you need a lot of data points. The same is true for serve receive in volleyball. Just watching equals guessing. It takes more than 40 receives to have a real stat. And remember, athleticism does not equal good passing. Think of Michael Jordan and hitting a baseball. He's an outstanding athlete, but he couldn't hit the baseball because it just wasn't geared for that. The other question is, what's the most critical stat? I spent a lot of years coming up with the easiest way to determine the level of play of a team. I've reviewed this with Terry and others at AOC. We have incorporated it into the Art of Coaching Simplified Stats Wizard, and you can click on this link in the slide set to try it for free. Your team's serve receive error percentage will tell you your team's level of play. Why? Well, if you can't control the serve receive, it won't matter how well you hit. I think you've played against great warm up teams bouncing spike after spike. Then you play and all of this disappears. Why does this happen? Because a bad pass leads to a bad set, leads to a bad hit. Without excellent first ball contact, it's hard to side out. If you don't side out, you don't get to serve and run points. And serving is the easiest skill to teach. So, level of play, I've divided into these categories. Beginners, basically greater than 50% errors. And I think you've seen this at 11's, beginners levels of play where somebody goes back and they serve 10 balls in a row. And the next person serves 9 balls in a row, and the next person serves and we're done. Right? So that's the way it works at the beginner's level of play. At low intermediate, between 30 and 50%, it starts to look more like volleyball because there's just enough control. And then at high intermediate, 15 to 30%, now you're really in a place where you're getting enough good receives to be able to run your plays and side out. In advanced, it's 8 to 15%, and elite is less than 8% errors. Now, these categories are sort of somewhat arbitrary, but good enough to give you an idea of like where you might fit. And I think that once you start looking at these numbers, you'll have a good idea of how well your team will perform. So with serve receive, the stat rating is based on a 0 to 3-point scale. 3 is a perfect pass, which means that it's good enough, close to the net, and slightly off to the center where you can run the middle quick. A 2 ball is high enough and probably close to the 10-foot line that your setter can set either outside hitter. And then a 1 ball is just basically recoverable where you're probably gonna have to chase it down and bump it over the net. And a 0 is no return. That's when you get aced by your opponent, or you pass it far enough the court that your team just can't get to the ball. So that's a 0. Now, calculating the pass rating is actually kind of complicated because it's a weighted average. And weighted average looks like this. And there's a few redundant numbers here, but let me just give them all to you. It's the number of zero passes times zero, which is zero, the number of one passes times one, the number of two passes times two, and the number of three passes times three, divided by the total number of passes. This is a difficult calculation to do without a calculator or a spreadsheet, but it's actually very easy on StatApp since it'll automatically create that number for you. And then it's also easy to do manually just by creating a 10-column chart, which I'll show you next. So the chart looks something like this. I actually have 14 columns because there's a column here you can see for the player name. And then there's a total, the average, and the error percentage. So basically, the player will just write in each of these columns, what their number was for each pass and just write it in. And once you get 10, you total it up. So in this case, Sally has an 18. And then you move the decimal places over and you get 1.80. You count the number of zero passes and multiply by 10, and that's the error percentage. So in her case, she's got one error, so she's got a 10% error rate. Now here's a serve receive drill, and you can do this in any format you want, but there's a couple of keys to remember. Now on the left side, you've got passers cycling in, so as soon as a person passes, they come off the court and they write their number on the whiteboard. Now the coach is standing here, and the coach will set up give you the pass rating by putting up her fingers on one pass, two pass, three pass, zero, and the player will go up and write it. The next player will fill in. Same thing on the service side; they'll be cycling through serving and rotating. Now you could actually have this completely flow through where the server can become a passer, the passer can become a server. It's pretty much up to you, but the important part is the coach calls the rating and the player posts this on the whiteboard. Now, why is that important? Well, so there's a couple things. When you're serving in a public scenario, what it does is it just generates more enthusiasm and energy because now the people know that they're being graded. And from a process perspective, I prefer to have the servers serving as hard as possible so that there's a lot of pressure on the receivers. And even if they miss, we don't really care. We just want the ball to go fast. If I have a ball machine, I'll use my radar gun and make sure that the balls are going at about 37 miles an hour and floating. This is a really difficult ball to pass, particularly coming off a machine because they tend to deliver very clean floats, and that floating ball will move a lot. To help the process, I've actually found a little bit better self-service way, which is this radar display system, which I'll describe to you in a minute. And then an effective float serve is between 37 and 40 miles an hour. Now at 40 miles an hour, the balls would tend to sail off the end of the court. So unless you're tall and jump serving, it'll be very hard to keep that ball in the court. If you have a higher intermediate or an advanced level team, this should be your target, but you'll have to kind of figure out where you guys stand. But this is a great goal to be to, because if you find somebody that's really tough against you that has a great offense, this is about the only way to neutralize your opponents by serving tough. So here's a little example of my radar system. It's a display radar it's like a kid's radar for baseball, and it's hooked to a tripod. And I've got 3 of them across here so that one of them will pick up the ball, preferably kind of going straight over it, so the reading will be fairly good. Now, what I like about the system is that it's self-service, right? The players can see the numbers and know if they're serving hard enough or not. And so I don't have to hold a radar gun and be yelling out. And so I can focus on coaching my team, and it's just a lot more efficient. You can see from the other side what it looks like, right? So the radar's on the opposite side of the net. And in this case, we're going from passing and pass rating to setting. So we can combine a number of drills into one. Now let's go back and think about the considerations again. As I mentioned earlier, right, doing the stats out in the open really improves the focus and the level of competition. And when the players argue about the pass rating with you, it's actually a good sign that they are engaged. So I would tend to smile and say, no, that was not a 3 pass. But, it's good that they're arguing about it. Now, there will be disappointing scores for some people, so it's important to stay positive and encourage your players because it is a tough drill and some folks will have a very hard time with it. If you have inexperienced players, like, for example, new athletes on a JV team, right, but maybe folks who've got other sports experience, taking the stats regularly really, really helps because a player can go from a 1.00 passer and improve by 0.1 each week. And in 5 weeks, 0.1, 0.5 might be 1.5 might be a good enough number to be on the court with the other players. So it's a really great way to know that you're incrementally improving each week as you practice. So here's the system. You can see the radar unit. It screws into the top with a regular camera type mount, tripod, and then you have a 5-pound ankle weight at the bottom just to keep things from tipping over if it gets hit. And so the links provided here will go to Amazon and show you exactly, how much it costs, and you can get it right away. The tripods are 2 for $35, so not very expensive. The ankle weights, I think, are kind of expensive for whatever reason. Okay, let's talk about benchmarks. I think that one of the things you always, at least I always hear, is like, what's a good passing stat? And the answer is always, well, it depends. 2.0 might be great for your league and maybe not, depending on, how good the opposing teams are. So the problem with all of these stats is it's relative. It's relative to your age bracket and your particular league that you play in. We have gotten a number of benchmarks here that we've collected, and the links in the slide set will take you to all of these specifically. Let me give you some examples of this in the next phase. So here's a part that's important, and this is like the prioritization of the statistics. We've analyzed more than 1 million sets, and we've done a win-loss correlation from 12s all the way up through college. The chart you see there is for high school varsity, and on the left side you see the positive charts of the bars, which is correlating positively to winning, and the right side are the negative things that will tend to correlate with losing. And so the prioritization is point scoring, side out, kills, aces, receive errors, dig errors, attack errors. Again, the full analysis is available on this link. But the key things to think about, right, are kills and aces, pretty evenly important, and then receive errors, almost as close, okay, and then from there, digs and such. Interestingly, the pass rating itself is a little less tightly correlated for obvious reason, because when you make a service receive error, you're instantaneously losing a point. So I would really focus on these three, with, of course, the serve and the receive part of it as the most important piece, because you won't get any kills unless you control these parts really well. So here's a set of benchmarks, and this is generated, with my software, SoloStats and Web Reports, the reporting package. And so, it's grouped by all these categories, and then you can see it automatically puts a red bar based on the statistics of my team, and this is within Web Reports, and generates this automatically. You can see that team's averaging, 3.2 aces per game, right? 10.6 of these, and so forth, okay? And so we can just kind of run through these charts really quickly. So you can see, right, we're on the right side of the distribution curve, so well past the median here, right? And so we're going to be winning more matches because at this level you can see the win percentage at 11 goes to over 75%. It's almost at 80% on this bar here. Okay, same thing here for attack and errors. So you can see that your attack errors win percentage, right? If you have 4 attack errors, right, your win percentage is still pretty good. Okay. And this gives you an idea kind of across the board at what numbers matter for that given age group. Now, then it's really, really important to stat your specific league, because these are kind of broad brush for this age group and may or may not apply for your specific situation. All right, this section really has a compilation of all the other seminars and webinars that I've created, and these are all videos. You'll find them at the SoloStats website, and on this page there's a whole bunch of ones like why it's important to take stats, and then simplified stat methods. This particular link is for how this benchmark analysis was done. I'll give you a lot of details around that. Okay, so the next phase is around capturing stats, and really this is about what to use. Now, typically, right, that you can use paper, and I think paper is great if you're not going to do anything else. At least tracking on paper would be a good thing. The one thing I don't like about paper is once you capture the stats, and now you got to transfer them to a spreadsheet and then turn them into real numbers, and you're a long ways from gaining insights just by looking at paper stats. When you use a stat app, like for example our SoloStats product, right? Once you've mastered the entry process, then the rest of it comes immediately because the analytics are free, and our stats back up to our web reports server, and there you get a whole bunch of reports. So you're going to see the numbers pretty quickly, and now you're looking for insights, and that's a great thing to do where the distance between stat taking and insights is really short because it's all taken care of automatically through our system. Stat services like Huddle Assist, it's great to have. We just feed them the videos and then they come back and give you your statistics. They synchronize your video to stats so you can break them down and show them to your players. It's a great tool. The only issue is it's very expensive and it's not available at match time. So those are the two downsides of the Huddle system. I've used it extensively, so I'm very familiar with it. In fact, I'm using it a lot this season because my club, has a license to it. So our first stats product, which we call Clipboard because we're trying to get you from your paper clipboard to an electronic clipboard and keep the learning process as low as possible. It's called SoloStats Clipboard, surprise. It's basically like a cell grid. So on the left side, are the names of the players, and across the top are the stats. Now, it's completely configurable, so you can choose, exactly which stats you want to track. You don't have to track this many. This is out of the box. We'll give you this. And then you can just cut down the list and make it easier. But the simplest part of this thing is you just press the button, right? You press it, tap into the cell, and that number will go from, say, 3 digs to 4 digs, okay? Very easy to use and not much learning other than, how to set up the specific stats that you want to see. And after that, it's press, press, press. The good thing is that you can then go and press this button up here that says Activity Report, and it will show you your calculated statistics, like, for example, your serve-receive rating. So all that stuff is done real time locally. The next product is SoloStats Touch, and this is a free-form product we built because people wanted to stat practices, and in fact, they're using this now for beach volleyball because 2 people and whatever stats you want to track for beach. It's super easy to set up. Again, these screens here are just one of 4 different types of layouts that you can pick from, and again, completely free form. Pick the stats you want to track. In this case, we're tracking passing stats, right, for just 6 people. That's with SoloStats 1, 2, 3. This is our basic entry-level package. It's easy to learn and easy to get started. Keeps full match stats. Just press the player and then the action to enter the stats. The app automatically tracks scores and rotations and has built-in real-time match stats. The next level up is SoloStats Live. It's a more advanced app, a little bit more sophisticated setup. But once you get started, you use your thumbs and their index so that you can actually stat while not looking down. That way you won't miss the action that's going on the court. Again, automatic scores and rotations, but it also keeps track of your substitution count. So all of our SoloStats stat apps are free. So they're unlimited use, both for Apple and for Google, tablet or phone, fully functional, unlimited numbers of teams, unlimited numbers of matches. We charge for the aggregate reports and the backups from SoloStats. So if you want to see a bunch of different matches or a tournament full of stats aggregated into a single report, this is where you would do it. Web Reports provides more than 20 different reports. One of our newer additions is graphing. You can graph match to match or tournament to tournament skills to see the trending of your team. You can also see the trending of an individual versus the team's average performance in a specific skill. So it's very, very useful way to track each player's development and to communicate with them by sending them these graphics. You can also review the effectiveness of each setter in one of our tables because it shows the attacker's performance versus the setter's sets. And that way you can see if Megan is setting better than Becky, as an example. Once you have web reports, you also get export to Excel and Max Preps. Now, here's how our system works. The app, if it's connected to the internet, and particularly if you're using a phone, which all of our apps support, will then push their data automatically to the web reports cloud server. And the cloud server will automatically then push it out to the SoloStats Coach app, as well as the SoloStats Fan app. The Coach app is for coaches, and it provides real-time stats. So the way I like to use it is my assistant coach is taking stats on his phone, and then I can see the stats right in my phone as we're playing in a match. And I can see what's going on with us versus them. This is an example. Like I can see, like in this case, right, the passing stats, we're not passing as well as our opponent. And this is what's leading to this particular loss here. On the customer side, with the families and the players, you can also set them up to receive real-time information. And one of them is this play-by-play of the match that's going on. This is really useful when, say, some parents can't make it because, say, one parent is going to Becky's tournament and the other is going to Sally's tournament. And so to keep track of what's going on, this will provide, real-time feedback. We have another important product called SoloStats Video. Once you've taken stats with SoloStats, you shoot your video during the match and then upload it to your own YouTube account. Then SoloStats Video allows you to synchronize that video to your statistics very, very easily. And once you've done that, because every single stat is time-stamped, then you can do breakdowns based on player and any kind of action. So in this case, we're looking at this specific player on the type of serve she's making. And you can see if you just click on this, it will show this series of serves by this player. Now, it's super easy to create playlists and then to send those lists to your players so that they can review what's happened. Or your players can even access the app and be able to create highlights for colleges, as an example. Very, very easy to set up and use. Rotate 123 is our founding product. This is how we got started before we started doing stats, and it was really to automate the process of setting up your rotations because we wanted to be able to optimize our rotations on our team and found that doing it on paper or other means was really, really cumbersome, and then you had to go and do it over and over again. Here, if you make a change and change a player here, it will ripple through in every other place where that player shows up. So you can try different players and different rotations and also move your serve-receive patterns to try to optimize your receive patterns. It supports your defense and your offensive forms, so you can also do those things in the product very, very easily. And one of the most powerful features is in our pro version is called matchups. And this allows you to look at your formations versus your opponents. And so if you have a situation, particularly in high school, where you can scout your opponent, then you can set up your rotation. It may turn out that with your certain setup, starting your rotation 3 would line up perfectly against your opponent, and that would provide you with the advantage versus them. So it's a really great feature to have. So that's it for the product line and for the rest of the presentation. If you have any questions, just contact me. It's Kyle at rotate123.com. Thanks for watching this video.